Okay. I've never been to one of these meetings before. The reason I'm here is because I'm hearing a lot of information on social media, on Village Talk, etc. I live in Sutton, and I'm talking mainly about the proposed crematorium. So I heard about it and everybody said, are we going to come? We were all trying to get together because we only heard about this meeting on Monday, that it was actually happening. So I tried to get people together, but a lot of people have said that they would like to come, but they can't come because they're at work and they can't get here possibly by 6 o'clock, that kind of thing. So because I was off, I said that I would come. So don't hang me, William. I really wanted to ask a few questions about this proposed crematorium. Obviously, I've lived in Sutton for 30 years now, and I've seen information in and out of the local village forum, whatever guise you want to put it in, about the Mepal Centre, the outdoor centre that used to be on the premises there. There was obviously a couple of incidents there with raves, illegal raves and all this kind of stuff, and they had to get security in, etc., etc. I don't agree with important decisions like this being, firstly, on social media. Secondly, I don't agree with us finding out about it in the village a lot later than we should have done. £13 million is a lot of money. That's the money that's being bandied around the village. That's the kind of conversation and the rumour that is going around Sutton at the moment. I understand there's a petition, which I have signed, and many of my other people in the street have also signed against the crematorium. The reason for that is, well, the first reason for that is that I certainly wouldn't want to be wishing farewell to my loved and closest friends next to a biodigester, which is right next door, and it stinks. Also, it's right next to the A142 with the lorries, etc., etc. So I don't want to be having something like that there. But the main point we're all trying to make is that £13 million of public money, that is money that was given to us, the community, the public, to be spent on various infrastructure things, i.e. parks, skate parks, places for the children to go where there's more than one or two benches to sit at that all the parents are fighting over, that kind of thing. Having to go to Hadnam to get to a skate park that was really built, it's a lovely thing for kids. We have nothing in Sutton. Now, the money is obscene, £13 million being spent on something like that we've got plenty of anyway in the area, I don't think is fair to spend. And I also understand from rumour that this decision was taken behind closed doors. It was all done in secret. So I'd like somebody to confirm whether it was or whether it wasn't. And a lot of people who I'm here representing today would like to ask the lead or the leader of this meeting as to whether there would be a public inquiry as to how our public money is spent.
Vanessa, thank you very, very much. I'm going to take from that there were 2 or 3 questions in there, which is fine, and I think we've got that covered. You're welcome to have a seat. Don't feel you've got to stand on ceremony. I'm going to ask the leader. We have 2 other questions, I believe, from people that aren't here. We've got 3 other questions from people that are there. What I think would be the best thing to do is if we hear those questions and then allow the leader to come back on all of them. Are you happy with that? Yeah? Sure. Yeah, if I take my glasses off, I am. Yeah. So this is from Charmaine Switzer of 42 Cambridge Road, Ely. Firstly, I support the decision to build the bereavement centre near Mepal, the sooner the better. Secondly, I believe the site is so much more than a beautiful, tranquil, desirable spot to rest, much more special than other nearby crematoria. I myself would like to rest there one day when I die. The rich biodiverse environment needs to be protected. My question to the council is, what are you going to do to protect the wonderful biodiverse area? What assessment has the council done in relation to its effect on the biodiversity and nature? I do hope that all the plans for this wonderful facility will be underway soon. I apologise. Is there a Drew Silver in the room? No? Okay, well, I will read the question. This is obviously from Drew Seaver of Ely. Can we have an independent public inquiry into council's behaviour surrounding the repurposing of what was the site of Mepal Outdoor Centre? I and many others in the East Cambs district have raised concerns following the exclusion of the public during the first 18 months of the project's development and the unethical spending of funds. Development should be immediately halted until we can verify there is genuine need for a crematorium that warrants 13 million expenditure in that location and whether or not it's what the public wants. That was from Drew Silver. Just check. And do we have Simon Dean in the room? I apologise. That was Simon Hazeldine. No. Okay. I will again read his question then. Dear Council, please can you explain why you are trying to force through a crematorium project when, one, the site is badly affected by an overpowering smell from the biodigester plant next door, as well as flies from the stagnant lakes. This makes the site totally unsuitable. Two, crematoriums nationally are seeing a downturn in business due to the popularity of no-fuss cremations. This means the viability of the long-term business is extremely uncertain. Three, several posts on local social media have shown roughly 80% of people expressing an opinion are against the plans. The council is supposed to represent the local people. Four, the costs have nearly doubled in just a few years and will almost certainly exceed the £13 million currently being quoted. That is a shocking waste of public money and could be far better used in the community. Five, nobody asked for a crematorium. If no alternative can be found for the land, why not just allow the site to return to nature? Thank you, Simon Hazeldine. That completes the questions? So that completes the questions. So I'll now invite the leader. Do you want a minute?
No.
No, okay. Now invite the leader, councillor, to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping you might give me, if I go over 5 minutes, because obviously got lots of different questions there, and I don't want to do my best to try and address them. I've scribbled them all down. It's very helpful just for future reference if we can have questions in advance so I could be a bit more prepared. But listen, thank you so much for coming and representing people. Really appreciate it, and the others that have put their questions in. I would very much encourage you to stay for the item if you've got time, because you will hear all sides of and a much more rounded discussion than perhaps has been taking place on social media. So if you can do that, that would be great. So there were various questions there. There was questions around the time of this and how long it's been in the public domain. This, in fact, the ambition to deliver a crematorium goes back well before the elections in 2019. It appeared in the District Council's corporate plan many years ago. And in fact, at that time, we hadn't identified any site or anything like that. We were quickly advised by experts that it was not best to advertise the fact that you wanted to try to deliver a crematorium. It is a highly competitive and litigious field. And that you needed to do extensive work before you were clear about what you were doing. However, the fact that this crematorium is in the proposals has been known for a very long time now. And the decision certainly was not taken behind closed doors. The actual decision, we've received a lot of information, some of which has been in exempt papers going back over many years, but the covering paper is always in the public domain. So the fact that we wanted to deliver a crematorium at this site has been known for a very long time. So it wasn't the final decision, the final business case was taken in open session at this council in February 2024, I think it was. And frankly, when you're dealing with a commercially sensitive project, it is completely normal process to do some preparatory work behind the scenes. And for much of that information to remain it is commercially sensitive. So you can't put it out there. Otherwise, it's just not going to work because commercial operators will have access to it. So it is normal process. It goes on at every single council in the country when they're working on commercially sensitive projects. In relation to the cost, I think what really matters most importantly here is yes, it was £9 million that we were setting aside when we previously looked at this, but we hadn't got a price yet. We've been out to tender. It's been a very competitive tender process. We had a lot of bids. The framework contract that we used was a really, really brilliant framework contract that allowed the council to go through a process of selecting a preferred provider and then really driving the cost really hard. So there has been a really detailed line-by-line budget analysis on every single item of expenditure that's been reviewed by the council's independent quantity surveyors and challenged every single line against the provider in a sort of open book process. So I think what really matters here is the council, our taxpayers, getting value for money, and I am absolutely assured that they really are. And this is going to be, if it goes ahead tonight, it's going to be a fixed price contract as well. So, you know, the price will be set. I think it's really important to understand that this is not just about a crematorium. This project is so much more than that. The project is about securing and protecting and enhancing a very beautiful, much loved and special site for the community now and into the future. The site is really unique. You obviously sound like you're quite familiar with it. It's a designated wildlife site. It's home to nationally important species that are using it as their home. And we've been working with the Wildlife Trust, who are really pleased with the management plans that we've been able to put forward as part of this project. But the bereavement centre, and why we renamed it, is because we want to offer a really supportive service. Mike Banyard talked about the necessity to support the bereaved, and that is what we want to do from this council. And I think we can do it really quite differently at this site. It's an eco-crematorium using electric cremators. There aren't many in the country, and that matters to a lot of people. There's going to be a natural burials area, a pet cemetery area, woodland walks, a lakeside setting. The chapel looks out onto the lake, a beautiful vista, very simple to say goodbye to loved ones. And residents will be able to enjoy the site for walking and bird watching and fishing. Those are the controlled fishing through a fishing club. Those are the activities that Wildlife Trust has said can be run compatibly with the biodiversity and the wildlife on the site. And so it will remain, you know, a site that is available to our whole community. And what I really hope is, because it's an electric cremator, it's limited to 2 cremations per day of operation. What that means is it's a very different offer to other crematoria, because people will be able to come and, instead of feeling like they're on a sausage factory and being put in one end and put out the other while the next cortege is arriving behind them, they will be able to have time at the site to gather with friends and loved ones. There'll be a function room that they can use to have celebration or wake afterwards, and to meet all their friends and family and have time there. And I also truly believe that this will be, you know, most people, unless you've got a memorial plaque perhaps, don't go back to crematoria to remember your loved ones. But I believe this site, which is massive, you know, the lakeside walk is huge, will naturally encourage people to go back and pause and reflect and think about their loved ones at this site. So I think it is a very different offer. The site needs securing, it needs to be used, it needs to be managed to protect and enhance the wildlife that's there. We had an ambition to deliver a crematorium. This will serve the vast majority of the population of East Cambridgeshire. Most people live in Ely, Littleport and so on. That is where the large populace of our district is, and it is all accessible to those people who don't currently have facilities in the district. You asked about the use of SIL. So Community Infrastructure Levy is a pot of money that we collect. It's essentially like a roof tax on all SIL chargeable development. Very significant sums. Best thing we ever did as council, to be quite honest, because we've pulled in 35 million. We're a small district. And SIL has supported the delivery of massive number of projects so far across our district. Just to give some examples, alongside our Growth and Infrastructure Fund as well, which was a separate pot of money, but we've supported many local community projects, new community centres, leisure centres, cycle routes, footbridges, schools, learning hubs, GP surgeries, new and improved roads, sports facilities, new car parks, land for cemetery space. The list goes on. We've also passported nearly £6 million given directly to parish councils, and Sutton, having a neighbourhood plan, actually gets 25% of all the SIL receipts that this council receives for development that happens in Sutton, and has very few restrictions on how it can spend that money locally. The district council does have much greater restrictions on how we can spend our SIL funds. The parishes don't, so long as they can show that it supports growth. So your ambition for a skate park, absolutely legitimate for the Sutton Parish Council to consider delivering a skate park through its significant SIL receipts that it's received. And I would definitely take that up with them. The district council's portion of SIL funds are much more about strategic projects. So we've supported things like Ely Southern Bypass, the A14 upgrade, the Hive District Leisure Centre. They're usually much bigger, more strategic projects to support growth. And a bereavement centre is absolutely a community facility that supports growth. We're a massive growing district. We're growing at 2%, pretty unprecedented, one of the largest growth areas in the country. So we need to cater for this. And I think we have an opportunity to do it really, really well. Yes, the site is next to the biodigester plant. The buildings are sited very far away. It never caused any issues in the past by people using that site. It has had some use in the past. I really genuinely don't think it's going to be an issue. People be in the chapel. All in all, I'm hoping. I've just got. There was another question that I haven't addressed about nature and biodiversity. And I thank the questioner for their question. And specifically, they were saying that they want us to get on with it, but also what is the council going to do to protect the nature and biodiversity? So over the past year, we've been undertaking numerous ecology surveys. The site's been surveyed extensively, and we've been working with the Wildlife Trust to develop an ecology management plan and the layout of the landscaping. The natural environment is featured very heavily in every single part of our design, including retention and restoration of the large natural sand dunes in the planting, additional native trees and grasses around the site, and maintaining the natural burial area as a flower meadow, which I think is going to be really beautiful. And residents will also be able to put up memorialisations to their loved ones with additional trees and bat or bird boxes. And we really want to encourage nature into the site. So in the coming months, we're also planning to invite expressions of interest from fishing clubs to use the northern edges of the lake, which are miles away from the buildings. And the successful club will have to demonstrate how they'll manage the lake carefully to protect the wildlife. There's some important species in the lake itself, and ensure people fish there responsibly. And as I've said, the site will be open to the public for sort of contemplative walks and bird watching so that everyone will be able to enjoy the surroundings. So when the time's right, we're going to be inviting the public to an open day to the centre so that we can share with you the newly restored natural landscape. And I really hope that you will come along. And I really hope that people that have asked questions will stay and listen to the debate, because I think you'll hear a rounded view about what our proposals are and why we think it's a good idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Vanessa, I just want to point out, and this is for your colleagues and also for anybody that's asked a question tonight that hasn't made it tonight, if they've not managed to be here tonight and they're not watching live on YouTube, I mean, what are they doing? But, sorry?
You've got to deal with the public inquiry. Sorry.
Well, I think we've gone on long enough, don't you? I think we've had enough of that.
Is it?
Yeah, sorry, there's live screening going on. This has actually been live streamed now. You look wonderful. Don't worry about that. Can I just say that is also the recording from tonight is posted on the website of the council, so anybody can go back in and hear your question, comment on whether you wash your hair or not, and have a look at the answers. All right. All right. Thank you very much for coming. It's very much appreciated. We wish you had more. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you.
We now move on to agenda item 18, which is the bereavement centre budget. Item 18 is asking for the council to approve the bereavement centre budget report as set out on the agenda and the 2 exempt appendices. May I have a proposer?
I would love to propose this. Thank you, Chair.
And do we have a seconder?
Very happy to second, Chair.
And would you like to reserve your right?
I would like to reserve my right. Thank you.
I now ask Isabel Edgar, would you like to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the council approved the full business case for the bereavement centre in February 2024. Since this time, a project team has finalised the technical design of the building, and Landscape, and undertaken the necessary surveys to get the project ready for tendering. Progress of the project has been reported to Finance and Assets Committee on a quarterly basis since that time, and further updates have been provided through member briefings. The tendering exercise has now been completed, a preferred contractor has been selected, and the project costs have been updated, all of which is detailed in your reports. Therefore, please see recommendations in section 2.1 A through to E for final consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Isabel. Now, I note that there are 2 exempt appendices associated with this report. If we can discuss this report without referencing any information from the exempt papers, we can continue in an open session. Does anyone wish to talk about the exempt appendices at this stage? No. We move on to questions to Isabel. Does anyone have any questions? No. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I want to start by saying a massive, huge thank you to the whole team that's put this huge piece of work and project together long into the past, but obviously more recently since we took our decision to go ahead with this project in February 24. And particularly, I want to pay massive thanks and tribute to Isabel, who's just added huge expertise and past experience into the mix with this, and it's given me huge confidence about the detail of this project. And this project is just about so much more than just the crematorium. It's about securing, protecting and enhancing a beautiful and much loved and special site for the community now and into the future. The site is absolutely unique. It's a designated wildlife site with nationally important species using it as their home. And we've been working with the Wildlife Trust, who are really pleased with the management plans we've developed. And it's not just an eco-crematorium, it's also about natural burials and the pet cemetery area and woodland walking and lakeside setting. And the residents will be able to enjoy the site for walking and bird watching and fishing, as I mentioned earlier. And the project also includes a separate community function room, and I hope that this will be able to be made available outside of operating hours for community use in the future. For people using the range of bereavement services, this will be a very different experience to that being offered by other crematoria outside of our district. The chapel is in the most beautiful, simple setting, looking out over the lake. People attending services to get to say goodbye to loved ones will have time. There'll be a maximum of 2 services per day, and they can use the function room to have a get together afterwards without having to rush off before the next service arrives. And they'll be able to return to the site to pause and reflect and remember their loved ones into the future. And I really hope and believe that they will do that. The site is in good striking distance for the majority of the population of East Cambridgeshire, most of whom live in Ely, Surham and Littleport. And for the first time, we now have the actual cost of the project. The cost is absolutely comparable with other crematoria that have recently been built. And what matters in this is that the contract we've secured is value for money and we can afford it. Costs have been driven hard through an open book process of line by line cost challenge by our quantity surveyors and through value engineering without compromising on what we're actually building. It's a fixed price contract which offers a high social value. The business case shows that even with competitive pricing, there'll be an income to the council from year 2 of operation to support the rest of the services that this council provides. Our decision to adopt the community infrastructure levy has been incredibly positive for this council and our communities, raising over 35 million to date, with much more to come into the future. SIL is about delivering infrastructure to support growth, and the bereavement centre and its associated uses do exactly this. Our district is growing. The council's worked hard to support delivery of numerous local community projects, including new community centres, leisure centres, cycle routes, footbridges, schools, learning hubs, GP surgeries, new and improved roads, sports facilities, land for cemetery, the Viva Theatre in Surham, the Ely Museum upgrade, cycleways, footbridges, Ely Country Park, the list goes on. And nearly 6 million is being passported directly to parish councils to support their projects. We've also got significant funds put aside for other facilities, water and flood management, accessible play equipment and other community assets. And parishes, I mentioned earlier, also receive SIL for their own projects through the meaningful proportion, 25% in some cases, 15% in others. SIL is mainly, of course, about delivering strategic infrastructure projects like the Southern Bypass, the A14 upgrade, the leisure centre, new schools, all of which we have done and will continue to do. The Bereavement Centre is indeed one such strategic project. It's absolutely appropriate for the council to choose to spend some of its SIL funds on this. It's not the case that this will deprive our residents. All projects on our SIL list are capable of being supported through SIL, including this one. 3,000 new homes are being delivered in North Ely alone. There are millions more to come in SIL receipts. Losing a loved one and facing grief is hard. And I believe we've got an amazing opportunity in an incredible setting to support people at a time of need. And I hope this will become a much loved facility that people return to pause and reflect and to remember their loved ones. It's a special place where we hope to provide a special and supportive service to residents in their time of need and bereavement. And I hope everyone will join me in working to make that happen.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. We now open up to the debate. Councillor Inskip.
Thank you, Chair. It should come as no surprise that I oppose the proposals for a crematorium on the site of Mepal Outdoor Centre in the ward I've represented since 2019. Let me explain why. And I first want to look back at the events that got us to where we are today. The secret plans to abandon the reopening of Mepal Outdoor Centre and to instead build a money-making crematorium on the site were first leaked to the Ely Standard in July 2020. It was claimed that the council had been working on plans in secret for at least 6 months, keeping opposition councillors and the public in the dark. It was subsequently revealed that the work on the plans had actually begun a full 18 months earlier in secret. A special council meeting was held on the 31st of July 2020 behind closed doors to discuss the proposals. And then late in the evening, East Cambridgeshire District Council published a public press release announcing the proposals. The first public confirmation that those leaked reports to abandon the reopening of the outdoor centre as a community and leisure facility and to instead build a crematorium were completely true. In January 2021, a public consultation was held, but the results were kept under wraps until August of that year. They were finally published in the Statement of Community Involvement on the East Cambs planning portal in support of the planning application as the council pushed ahead with the plans. That consultation showed a massive 85.4% opposed the plans, with just 13% expressing support. Yet still, the administration pushed on, ignoring residents' views. By early 2022, more than £250,000 had been spent on preparing the planning application and on the demolition work. The council estimated at the time it would need a further £6.54 million to develop the crematorium, leading to a total cost not far short of £7 million. Today, the report before us shows that those total costs have subsequently soared to nearly £13 million, with £2 million already spent. And that £13 million is to come from the council's receipts from the Community Infrastructure Levy, money that is intended to be used to improve local infrastructure and amenities. Do councillors opposite really believe that local residents are demanding a crematorium in preference to better health facilities, school building improvements, footpaths and cycleways, better play areas and improved leisure facilities? Of course, we all know it isn't true, and yet councillors opposite still continue to push through this vanity project. But setting aside the public's opposition and the inappropriate allocation of SIL monies intended to improve local amenities, does the crematorium project make any business sense? There are already crematoria at Huntingdon, Cambridge, Bury St Edmunds, closer and more convenient for many residents in the village, and Dignity's crematorium in March is just 12 minutes drive from the Mepal site. Cambridge and Peterborough have seen the number of cremations fall annually by hundreds since the opening of the Huntingdon crematorium. Clear evidence, if it wasn't already apparent, that there is excess crematorium capacity in the area. Adding more capacity will drive down fees and income, throwing the Mepal crematorium business case into doubt and risking operating losses to the district council, which would ultimately fall to council taxpayers. This evening, the decision before us is clear. Does the council press ahead with this misguided vanity project, including all the evidence that shows it's a bad idea and rising roughshod over residents' views? Or is it finally time to kill off the proposals and instead work in the best interests of those residents who elect us? And I say to you, Chair, do you want to be remembered at your first council meeting for the person who pushed through this white elephant project on the casting vote, or the person who finally brought the council to its senses?
Thank you, Councillor Inskip. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Horgan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think there's already been a mention previously by me of my forensic analytic mind and how that's been used occasionally. And I draw the memory of one of my fellow councillors, Councillor Lay, who worked closely with me for the best part of 6 months to go through the business case and really satisfy ourselves that it stacked up. And trust me, as I used to sort of pull company reports apart as part of my working life for the best part of 47 years, I have one or two experiences that I can bring to bear when looking at numbers, spreadsheets, and justifications. I remind myself that on the 20th of February 2024, after completing that forensic analysis, both Councillor Lay and I voted in favour of the bereavement centre, and that's why it was passed at that time. I continue to support it, and now that we have firm figures, because I believe that the business case continues to stack up. If it didn't, I would vote against it. I wouldn't need to be reminded by anybody about what residents do or don't want. If it's a good investment for this council, it's a good investment for residents as well, in my opinion. So I will be voting in favour of it, but appreciate that not everybody may agree to that view, but I can assure you that I have been through this with a fine-tooth comb and I remain satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've spoken about this and aired the views of parish councils in my ward, and all of them have said what a ridiculous thing. They'd like to see the SIL money being spent on more practical projects. For instance, just to mention two of them, the cycleway from Lode to Bottersham. Lode doesn't have any shop, it doesn't have any primary school. If there was a proper good cycle route from one to the other, and it was actually safe, then a lot more children would be travelling by cycle to school. It also, one village we had an accessible play area inspection. I remember the report that we had about accessible play areas. And the village got a report, the parish got, and it said, well, one of the things you really need to make it more accessible is walkways between the various bits of equipment. Well, they can't afford to do that. This is where we want to be spending money. And this must be true for other village parishes as well, and parish playgrounds. I mean, have other councillors in this chamber actually asked their parish council about what they think about this kind of thing? I don't know. I mean, I certainly have. There's apparently some green credentials here, which I must query. I mean, using an electric car actually doesn't save costs. You're still going to produce the energy to move the car. It's just cleaner to do it by electricity rather than by petrol, and probably slightly more efficient. But it still means travel with any means is still an energy absorbing thing. I did last time mention about water cremation as a green alternative. It takes 1/4 of the energy cost to have water cremation. And it's something that is operated, and it would be a really green thing to do. But no,
we pursue electric cremation. I also understood that there was an offer of land at Soham in exchange for the Mepal site by someone. Soham, notwithstanding the fact that this cremation, that we don't really need a crematorium, might have been a much better place to have a crematorium in the centre of the district. In a sense, I suppose it's rather like poker at the moment, isn't it? That, we put so much into the ante, we're now just we're calling now to saying, shall we take the pot? Shall we put more money in? Shall we put more good money in to follow the money already there? Or is it going to be bad money to follow there? And I think at this point, this is where one withdraws and says, that's not. Councillor Bailey, in her answer to the question posed to her, said crematorium are highly competitive. And this is actually quite true. Crematorium are highly competitive. And we are going to step into a business which is actually highly competitive. And something which is Councillor Inskip mentioned, there's a crematorium just nearby, run by a company which actually has a lot of capital behind it that we don't. And I think, I agree with Councillor Bailey, it is highly competitive, but it is actually going to be a problem. In fact, I'm actually willing, I'm not sure if I could do this in a council chamber like this, but putting a £100 bet that within 5 years, this crematorium will still not make a profit. Anyone want to take a bet? No?
Can we move it along, please, Councillor Trapp?
Sorry?
Can we move along, please?
Okay, all right. Okay, so no one wants to take a bet. Really, we're spending 13 million of residents' money, but that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Trapp. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've got a Liberal Democrat now wanting to make a profit by gambling on a negative attitude. And I think that's not the right way, but if you start off things with a negative attitude, you will eventually get a negative result. Thank you for your support. I know that many of us have all been around in the last few weeks, knocking on people's doors and asking their opinions about almost everything. Well, one of the first things that came over to me when I was doing this was, we're fed up of house building going on and new houses coming along without any infrastructure. And it makes obvious sense, doesn't it? You shouldn't build houses in Northstowe, in Waterbeach or Ely North and just think about schools and roads. I don't know if everybody's aware, but in 1970, 50% of people who died got buried and 50% got cremated. The figures are now 80% being cremated and 20% being buried. And of course, we've got a huge increase in population. So I think we've got to really look at this as what it is. It's infrastructure. And it's going to take a couple of years to build, I should think. And it's going to take time for these houses to come on. But these houses are being built now and they've got people moving into them. So I think it's absolutely essential that we listen to the people and have the infrastructure before the houses. And this is a way we can do it. It's also of great interest to know that we all know this authority may not exist in 2 years' time. And we may be sharing our reserves of cash with other large authorities who already have eye-watering debts. So how would Little East Cambs survive if it was movable? I think it would go into something like the Milton Road improvement in Cambridge, which cost over 30 million. And the only net result was there's a bicycle route on either side and it's blocked up the city. That's the sort of thing that might happen. So really, 32 million on the Milton Road. I beg your pardon. I'd rather it was sent, the money was spent on things that benefited people from East Cambs, Ealing district and this area. And talking about travelling distances in a car to a crematorium is really academic, because hopefully you're only going to go to sort of 6 or 8 funerals in your life. It's not a thing you do every day like going to work. And therefore, and I've travelled, and from Ely to this site was, I think, about 18.5 minutes. So it's not really that far. I think the result of us having an income ongoing will be great. And I know Councillor Trapp is convinced there won't be an income, but then we can all sit back and criticise and say, I wouldn't have done that, would I? But so far, we've been successful. The borrowing costs that we would have are nil. And any other ones that are being used in the area have, maybe they're having financial troubles because they built it in some cases with borrowed money. And of course, borrowed money needs paying for. And I think we should get on with it. The costs can't go down, they'll go up. And it's a facility which is clearly, if you look at the population figures, a necessary thing for this area and something which will last the community, whether it be a unitary authority or a district council, for many years to come. And people will be proud when they go and drive past there. And of course, we've got, if we leave it as it is, it costs us money. And I'm surprised that the people of Sutton...
Councillor Hunt, can I ask you just to come up, please?
The people of Sutton know that this has been planned for years, because the leader of the opposition was on a working party with me and another Conservative, and she was fully aware of the efforts we made to try and keep the place as a leisure park. She knows it, but she doesn't talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hunt has just stolen some of my clothes. I was that third Conservative in the, or the second Conservative in the room with Councillor Dupre, and I can't read my own writing now. Cambridgeshire Acre had originally had the franchise for running the Mepal Outdoor Centre, of which we hear so much. They handed it back to East Cambs because they could not make it work. We invited interest from a number of leisure businesses. We had several come in, and one actually said they would take it on. After a few months, they had to admit that they couldn't make it work, so they withdrew. The reason then it laid fallow was because we couldn't think of anything to do with it. So it wasn't that there was a leisure outside sports centre there, it just died away. Now, Councillor Trapp refers to cycle paths. What is it, 2-3 years ago that we invited parish and town councillors to put forward active travel things for consideration, including cycle paths. I know that because I'm a town councillor for Littleport, and we worked very hard at trying to push to get a good route sorted out. Sustrans were engaged. They looked at several schemes, and Bottisham may well have been one of those. I can't remember now. But at the end of the day, we have tried to do this. Parish councils do have to get off their butts sometimes and do things themselves. Littleport is a large community. We have a town council, and we are in a more fortunate position than many, but we have achieved quite a lot by our own efforts. So, it is possible. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. When I first came to this council, I'd been a new councillor for a short period of time when a resident of Haddenham came along and asked for help. He was the treasurer of the voluntary organisation which was running the Mepal Outdoor Centre. And I went along, I think I spoke to John Hill about it, and but we couldn't really do anything very much at the time because it was practical help they wanted. And then unfortunately, within a month or two, he died. And the organisation, which was council, was voluntary, didn't really survive. Later on, as has just been pointed out, we tried to resurrect an outdoor centre with help from outside. And we got somebody, but they couldn't do it because it required about £1 million worth of investment. And that's the reason why they had to give up. East Cams wasn't prepared to pay £1 million to keep this outdoor centre going. But now we're prepared to pay £13 million to destroy it. And I think it's a really great pity that we are doing this. And I really think that what we should have been doing is following through and keeping the outdoor centre, because the outdoor centre was used by youngsters from all over the district. In fact, people came from outside the district as well. And the youngsters used to really enjoy being there available on the various facilities were there, the sailing, the climbing, and these other areas of promoting youngsters and promoting people who weren't able to do anything else in that sort of area. So I think really what we've done is we've allowed the outdoor centre to vanish away for a relatively small sum of money, and we're now prepared to let it be totally destroyed and provide us a cremation area that which I'm surely won't work because it won't be able to compete against March. And we'll end up with something which will become an absolute white elephant. So please don't spend all this money on this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to point Councillor Trapp to the sill pot for accessible play that was set up after his colleague, Chika Akinwala, asked for it to be brought forward to council. I believe there's a minimum of 50,000 in there. I believe there may be now more available. And in our parish council meeting on Monday in Fordham, we made the decision, because we need to replace some equipment, we're going to replace it with accessible play, and we are going to approach East Cams for a grant to help fund it. The rest of the money will be coming from Fordham's own SIL money, because that is a responsible way of doing things. That's the first thing I would like to say. Not everybody, when they're planning a funeral, is looking at just cost. Some people want to say goodbye to their loved ones in a calm and tranquil way. I had the sad job of attending my brother-in-law's funeral in September last year down in Oxford. Councillor Bailey talked about cemeteries these days, or crematorium, being like a sausage factory. If I tell you that the outgoing funeral and the incoming funeral became so intricately bound together because they were in such a hurry to get people through, we weren't even sure we were at the right funeral at one point. It was ghastly. The fact that we are going to be having 2 funerals a day means that people can say goodbye with respect and care. I would like to take issue with Councillor Colbert, who spent many hours on social media saying that we had deliberately closed down the Mepal Centre. That is simply untrue. As Councillor Wilson has just said, the charity that was running it couldn't make a go of it. They were running at a loss. They had to pull out. I was also on the committee with Councillor Dupre and Councillor Hunt and Councillor Ambrose Smith, and I think Councillor Austin might have been on it as well, to look at the alternatives. And the only company that was interested in taking it up was one of these extraordinary wipeout things where you have huge plastic beds of things that they used to see when I go on holiday. You used to see them dotted all along the coastline. They're no longer in business because the lawsuits that were attracted by injuries just took away the business case. And that's exactly the same reason why these people pulled out as well, because it no longer became viable. And I'm glad you think that us becoming, suddenly we are, I think you said, why didn't we take it on? Why didn't we run it? I wasn't aware that East Cambs District Council was in the business of running outdoor centres. And in fact, can I point members opposite to the fact that the County Council, Liberal Democrat controlled County Council, have just closed an outdoor centre in Stibbington because it's no longer viable. I wonder why. Thank you, Chair.
Is it a point of order or personal? Sorry, we have Councillor Lay first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can all hear me. I just want to say that the remarks Councillor Bailey made about doing 2 upmarket funerals a day from the new crematorium, I think will work and will work very well indeed. But I would like the rest of you to understand about the marketplace before we decide on voting to go ahead with this. I don't know whether you are aware, but the market share for cremations lies with 2 major bodies. The co-op have 40% of the market and have sales operations in every town across this country and are under contract to Wesley Cremations for carrying out all the cremations that are brought into the co-op. Dignity have 20% of the market. They have 776 branches across the country selling their services. The market is changing also. Sun Life Cost of Dying report of 2025 said that 47%, and this is Sun Life's report, not words that I'm putting out of the air, 47% of the people now look for quotations from undertakers before they ever go ahead with a burial or a cremation. And from the same report in 2021, only 2% of the market had direct cheap cremations. In 2022, that figure had raised to 4%. In 2023, it had raised to 10%. And in 2024, last year, it was now at 20% of the market. The National Association of Funeral Plan Providers has 20 licensed members under the Financial Conduct Authority. Direct prepaid cremations last year registered at 114,282, of which 62% of them were unattended cremations. The pre-planned total of cremations now stands at £1.7 million. This is people who have made the decision in advance and have not left it to their loved ones to decide what will happen to them when they die. More of us are making the decision up front, and those of us who are making the decision up front are deciding, basically, that we don't want to give the money to the undertakers. We'd rather have our body disposed of and for the family to have the money instead. And this is going this way for one other reason. 50% of the people in this country can't put their hands on £500. They just don't have any money. So if you have a look what's happening within the industry, what's happening within the industry is very similar to what happened to bookmakers, vets practices, and now undertakers. If we go back far enough, you'll see that bookmakers were hidden away in all of our towns. Now the large companies with city money have bought them all out, and you'll see Ladbrokes, you'll see William Hills, but you will not see any of the small bookmakers. The vets practices, you will see vets practices still with the name of the vets practice over the door, but in effect, they are owned by the big companies, and undertakers are being bought out. If you go to Fall Hill and have a look at what was an independent undertaker there, they still have the same name over the door, but underneath it says Dignity.
Councillor Lee, can I just ask you to sum up, please?
I will, yes, certainly. The change in buying habits is happening. The way we're buying funerals is changing. And just to finish with, if you have a look at what's happening on our doorstep with Cambridge Crematorium, within this circle here of 25 miles, Cambridge Crematoriums will send a van out, pick up a body and take it back to be cremated. So the market is changing. Please, if you only want to do 2 a day, you may get away with it. But in general, this is a market that is changing dramatically. So don't waste your money. Be careful with the people who gave us that money. Let's use it sensibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I have Councillor Sharp next.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pick up a few points that have been said around this. Yes, this was came into the public domain, I think, as Councillor Inskip mentioned, back in 2020. So members of the public have been aware of our proposals since then. Obviously, we had to discuss things in confidence because a lot of this is commercially sensitive. If we release that information out into the public domain, then those who want to compete against us would obviously be able to pick the various polls that they want to and in our proposals, and then that they would gain a commercial advantage because they would know what our costs were and prices. I think what we've had before us, there's conservative projections in there in terms of the outcomes. And what we're also forgetting or not touching on in 5.11, we're looking at year to 2 to 10 operating profits on a average basis. Now, obviously, none of us can foresee totally the future, but I think these figures have been done on a conservative basis, and that operating profit will be ploughed back into the council. It's coming back into residents. So it's not money that's going to go down and be lost forever. I think you've got to look at the track record of this council with the trading company, where we refurbished 88 homes from the MOD, the CLT, Kennet and others, Barton Road, Hadnam. Not one penny of public money was spent on building any of those houses. They've been built basically for nothing by using and borrowing, in some cases from the combined authority or borrowing from the council, and we've actually achieved that. So we've got a track record for actually doing something like that. Councillor Hunt touched, I had the misfortune, I think it's best served, driving down Milton Road yesterday afternoon. No traffic around. It took me about 10 minutes because at every traffic light you were stopped for about 5 minutes. I mean, and that was £36 million that is now on the ground in tarmac. That money's lost forever. I mean, I'm from the south of the district, so I don't know Mepal as well as obviously I've driven past it many times. But as I understand it, Mepal was totally destroyed in the end by fire and by arson. But basically, we needed to do something with that site. And I believe that the working party that were looking at that found that there wasn't a taker, there wasn't a commercial operator who was going to take it on. So we had to do something with it. So I do feel that, yes, we're obviously the market is changing, but I do feel, to sum up, that the projections that we've got are based on conservative projections. So I think we are covering ourselves there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Colbert.
It's all right, Chair. I shall not respond now on other authorities when the member has been named. they have been permitted to respond immediately rather than to use the already arranged order. I think my colleague, Councillor James Lay, has made some very, very valid points, and I prefer to say nothing at this stage now. Thank you.
Councillor Du Preez.
Thank you, Chair. This is a white elephant vanity project and it needs to stop. It started off badly, with public money being spent on it for 18 months in secret without councillors being informed, and now it's being forced through this council against huge public opposition, even though costs have ballooned from 8 million to 13 million. It's a grotesque waste of that money, which was required and received from developers to support local communities with the impact of development in their area. Instead, it's being used to build a commercial business and start a beggar my neighbour price war with an established private sector competitor. And the residents of East Cambridgeshire were never asked whether they wanted it. The site is next door to a smelly biodigester with aggregate lorries thundering past every minute from the workings across the road. It's the furthest you can get in East Cambridgeshire from much of the district, whose residents will continue to use more established facilities nearer to home. And it's the nearest you can get in East Cambridgeshire to the competing crematorium 12 minutes up the road in March, which is already operating below capacity. This isn't going to be the money spinner the consultants have told you it will be. The cremation market is changing, as we've heard, with a huge shift to cheap and heavily marketed direct or pure cremations. There isn't an unfulfilled demand for more cremation space. It's a static market, with each new crematorium relying on taking market share from its neighbours and making all of them less viable. The latest publicly available figures from cremation.org.uk show that between 2020 and 2023, the new crematorium opened by Huntingdon Town Council grew to a point when it was managing over 800 cremations a year, though the facility is still struggling financially. But in that same period, annual cremations at Peterborough fell by around 130 and at Cambridge by over 500. Bury St Edmunds throughput rose by 400 annually, but the other Suffolk crematoria between them handled 450 fewer cremations every year. It's been said that this facility is needed because we don't have a crematorium in East Cambridgeshire. But most people don't consult local government boundaries when they choose where to remember their loved ones. And in any case, East Cambridgeshire will cease to be a district in 3 years' time as a result of local government reorganisation, at which point, depending how the government slices up the map, we could have 2 or even 3 crematoria in our new council area. It's also been said that this council needs to spend the money to stop it falling into the hands of those neighbouring councils before we are joined to them in the reorganisation and take on a share of their debts. But if that is the case, any profit from this venture, and as I've said, I don't believe there will be any, won't benefit the people of East Cambridgeshire. It will just be used to pay off their debts. You've lost the 13 million and you've lost the income that you think you'll gain from it. So why not use that £13 million wisely and well on education facilities for developments in Littleport and North Ely, where the money in the budget has been delayed, for the desperately overcrowded health centre at Soham, to which this council has so far allocated not one single penny, on better and more accessible playgrounds, cycleways, pedestrian routes. This council isn't responsible for those things, the council leader said on the radio this morning. And she said in this meeting just now that this council wasn't responsible for, I can't remember what it was she said, but something else. But neither is it responsible for competing with the private sector to cremate the dead. What happened to the small government of the Conservative Party? This emperor has no clothes. Members opposite have been whipped to praise the richness of their colours and the suppleness of their fabric. They will tell the emperor how fine she looks in them. But there are no clothes, and some of you can see that. Some of you can. This project is a complete waste of £13 million, for which there are so many better uses. The uses for which it was intended. Please use your better judgment and your courage and vote against this grotesque scheme.
Thank you, Councillor de Bray. Are there any other speakers before we go to Councillor Kane?
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Vanessa, Charmaine, Drew and Simon for asking their questions and clearly stating their views. And I would note that of those four, only one supported this proposal. The proposal for a crematorium doesn't deliver a good return on investment. It adds to carbon emissions. It will use most of current and assumed future SIL funds, and there are existing crematoria nearby. The costs for the crematorium are expected to be £13 million, a significant increase on the original estimate of £8 million. The estimated net income has fallen to just 2.9 million over the first 10 years of operation. At that rate, it would take 40 years just to recoup the investment, not allowing for additional cyclical maintenance and replacement costs. In order to keep costs to this level, the council will only install the minimum number of solar panels required by planning guidance, meaning that the crematorium will be a net emitter of carbon. We have formally recognised the climate emergency and committed to get to net zero. And now the administration is proposing to proceed with a project which will make that hard to achieve unless third parties come in to bail us out. In February 2025, it was reported to the council that the remaining SIL funds were less than the outstanding commitments. It was agreed to reallocate the funds. The balance was then to be provided from future SIL income. And Councillor Huffer, that included the accessible playgrounds. There is nil allocated at the moment. There was to be more to come. That's what the papers say. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm the councillor who was misled by an officer of this council when I specifically asked a question about the bereavement centre. We've also heard a lot of information today about how there was nobody interested in that site. And yet I have heard from a local charity that they did indeed propose to take the whole site, and they were told that because they didn't have their whole business plan ready, they couldn't be considered, because we'd been spending, this council anyway, had been spending 18 months in secret preparing its crematorium plan, we now know. Because the increases of the crematorium costs, a further almost £4 million will now need to come from the future funds before any other community infrastructure could be funded. In addition to the projects already identified, as we've heard, the GP surgery in Soham is bursting. It needs larger premises, and it is going to need funds from this council to deliver that. And I'm very surprised that Councillor Hunt, in his canvassing, didn't find a lot of people telling him that, because I certainly did in my canvassing. As we've heard this evening, there are already surplus provision of crematorium services. So there's no need for this crematorium, which risks being an expensive white elephant for the council. Now, I know many of the members opposite run their own businesses. Before voting for this project, they should ask themselves whether they would invest in a project where it would take at least 40 years just to recoup the investment before they begin to see any real return. If they're honest, the answer to that is clearly no, and so they wouldn't do that investment. Councillor Bailey said in answer to the questioner, the question is the taxpayer getting value for money? £13 million, which could be spent on all sorts of community facilities around the district. £13 million that it will take 40 years just to get back that £13 million. Don't shake your heads. You yourselves have said it's going to earn a net 2.9 million in the first 10 years. Do the maths. So honestly, this is not good value for the taxpayer. It's not even an investment. It's just, I am amazed that anyone who has any business sense whatsoever will even countenance this. It's not good for the taxpayer. And I think every member should be very careful what they do with the public funds in which we are entrusted. And I would like a recorded vote on this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Do we have any other speakers before the seconder? Councillor Akinwala.
Thank you, Chair. I strongly feel that this money can be better spent in providing inclusive play, like many of our councillors have said this evening. I feel that this area really lacks inclusive play areas that needs to be dealt with now, not in the far-fetched future. I feel that this money, if it's spent now, can be used to develop fully accessible adult facilities that's usable for not just for the few, but children with disabilities in this area. It is really, really important that every child, regardless of where they are from, their background, is not excluded from the community. I feel that we need to provide a safe and stimulating environment for children for these children to be able to play again alongside their peers. Looking at the actual plan of our local plan in East Cambridgeshire and East District Cambridgeshire, I feel that this is a visible and impactful expression of our council's commitment to strengthen our community, to make sure that we're inclusive and we're really a sustainable community, not just for the very few, but for children of all backgrounds. I've got a brother who's got autism, and I know the distress that I went through as a sibling when he was growing up, being excluded from playgrounds around the area. I know the importance of every child in this area being able to have access to a play area, not being excluded just because they have a disability or have any sort of anything that's going to exclude them. I think it's really important that we try to look at the bigger picture here and make sure there's the funds available to support these children right now and not in some far-fetched future. Thank you.
Thank you. You've spoken, Councillor Colbert. Are there any other speakers before the seconder? No. We move to the seconder.
Thank you very much, Chair. Look, can I thank the opposition for their interesting perspective. Look, I mean, Councillor Dupre wants an alternative, so I don't understand why they wouldn't offer one amicably. I don't understand why we have the patronising jibes that are genuinely held decent idea. Yes, of course, some people want an alternative. This council tried very hard before my time for a new outdoor centre, as I understand from others. But this project was in our manifesto. And when we went to the electorate in May 2023, we won. So we want our endeavours to work at this council. The opposition have mentioned that there's going to be, in their view, no financial benefit. Well, firstly, there is. I can't refer to the specific market analysis, but we have done specific market analysis. It is much better than is being made out. But making money in the district was never the motivation. I don't understand why it would have been. It's simply a consequence of the quality and the beautiful lakeside service that we'll be providing, which a future council will benefit from. So I don't think we should sanction saying we shouldn't do this because of local government reorganisation either. And they talk about a price war. As I say, I can't discuss the market analysis, but it's not why we're doing it. It's a consequence, not a motivation, and far from a reason to stop. So I went up to the site last week, like I did when we were asked to approve the business case. So I sat there for a while. To me, it's the only solution which protects that really rich biodiversity. I don't actually know anyone else in East Cambridgeshire where you can see otters, for example. And it's in a terrible state. There's fly tipping everywhere. And look, after the outdoor centre was not viable, which I'll put on record, I would prefer. If it was viable, I would love to do that, genuinely. But it's not. And I think of a bereavement centre. I lost my granddad last year. I know he would want to be somewhere like that. And it turns out a similar story to Councillor Huffer. It's not the way we would have liked to have done it. So look, it takes care of residents. I support it on principle, but there's been a change, right? So I told the Director of Operations, I don't mind sharing this, we need 4 assurances, and they are exactly what is contained in this paper. The cost rose because the inflation was utterly unprecedented in the building industry, particularly the steel industry. We're far from the only provider to account for more risk. The cost reductions will not at all impact the state-of-the-art quality of that service. I'm genuinely stunned at the clarity of that plan and at the beauty of the site. And now that the process is completed, there are extremely few uncertainties left. That's a live market price now. But the most important point of all, and I think this is something we will all share, we can pay for this sustainably without hurting other projects by using the same pot of SIL we originally intended, the other pot of SIL, and fully funding the many others we've committed to. I mean, the only white elephant is the claim that we're sacrificing community facilities. That's not true. In the future, we will have income, and a proportion of that will go to the other pot, and a proportion of it will go to the existing pots like schools, the leisure centre, the health facilities, Ely Country Park, inclusive play, for which I'm in total agreement with Councillor Akinwale, and the bereavement centre will then be from what is left over in the other pot. And many others are on our SIL list as well that have not yet had applications made to them. Just to pick a few, Sam Station, Wickham Cycle Path, Recycling Centre, GP surgeries. There's so much on there, and Councillor Bailey listed many more earlier. We talk a little bit about the sunk costs of £2 million. Yes, we've spent £2 million. What the opposition haven't seemed to acknowledge is that if we don't then capitalise those costs, they become a huge burden on the revenue budget. So we basically have to raise council tax to cover it. And that's not what I'm in the business to do. And I'm afraid the sunk cost fallacy only really applies when things aren't worth doing anymore. And this so clearly is. The business case is almost identical to how it was before. It's still viable. We do have to make another tough call to get there. I completely appreciate that. But if we are to be abolished, then this is what I want our council's final message to be. I want to give local people a chance to say goodbye to their loved ones by the lakeside in the heart of the Fens. That's a chance they don't currently have. Even those who disagree with the specifics of this site will acknowledge that that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And that's my motivation. It's not profit, it's not convenience, it's not competition, it's certainly not party loyalty. I can't believe some members of the opposition would sink so low as to suggest that. And I'd never vote for it if I thought it would harm my residents. It helps them. So with them in mind, I am voting in favour of this tough call, so that whatever happens at the end of this crazy life, my residents and my family can go back there at the end because of a decision that I made tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Vellacott. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a few things to address, but I'm loath to follow that amazing speech by Councillor Vellacott, really. The Lib Dems chair are very good at saying what they don't want and what they don't want us to do. They objected to the Ely Southern Bypass. It was described as a white elephant, somewhat nonsensically. They objected to the regeneration of 88 houses on the former MOD housing site in Ely. They objected to the £1.2 million that this council has allocated to the building of a brand new GP surgery in Streatham because the Haddenham surgery is bursting at the seams. And yet they objected to this council supporting that project. Absolutely astonishing. And they objected to the Hive Leisure Centre. So the Liberal Democrat history at this council is to object to all of these facilities and community projects and ideas for our community. It would be nice if they put forward some positive vision for a change, because I've yet to hear any positive suggestion from them that is viable at all for the site in question. I, of course, respect the right to object to this proposal, and I do that respectfully. But I have to say, Chair, it is quite wrong to spin stories that the council closed or abandoned the outdoor centre in order to somehow deliver this project. The two are absolutely not linked in any way at all. I was here at the time. We were absolutely wedded and excited about the idea of delivering the outdoor centre and the new provider that was coming in. We were completely gutted when they had to pull out because they could not make the capital investment that was required stack up against the income. And that is the problem with outdoor high leisure impact facilities. They're not working, and the county council knows that. It's had its own struggles on that subject. The public engagement that Councillor Inskip referred to only solicited 188 responses, most of which I have to say were from Sutton. And 85% of the people that responded to that very early public engagement exercise told us that they had very important historical allegiances to the old outdoor centre. So I don't think it's very surprising that many of them expressed a desire to keep it open. And obviously, we tried very hard to do that. And it wasn't helped by the fact that Councillors Inskip and Dupre continued for many years to peddle the myth that that site could be used for an outdoor centre when we all knew it couldn't, if we wanted to respect the wildlife and biodiversity that exists on that site, and they continue to pretend to residents that it was possible to.
Councillor Bailey.
That claim.
Councillor King, could you just confirm which procedural rule your point of order refers to?
I'm raising a point of information about what Councillor Bailey has just said. She has said yet again that the site was incompatible with the environmental nature of it. I have asked officers over and over again for the documentary evidence of that, and I have never received it.
Can you carry on, please?
That is not a point of personal explanation. She hadn't even spoken on the subject. Just to reiterate, the advice from the Wildlife Trust is that the compatible leisure use on that site is low level impact leisure use, walking, controlled dog walking, controlled fishing and bird watching. The use of SIL, members opposite have talked a lot about health services, cycling and walking, and I noted it in some of their social media content. Health services are actually the responsibility of the health service, the National Health Service, to deliver, and the private practices that are GP services and the way that that operates in this country. Cycling and walking facilities are actually the responsibility of Cambridgeshire County Council to deliver. They are the Highways Authority, with some assistance and support in certain instances from the Combined Authority and indeed from government. They are not the responsibility of our SIL money to pay for those services. Regardless of that, we have done a huge amount from this council to support those types of services, not least the 1.21 million for Streatham GP surgery, which the members opposite voted against some of that funding. We've done more than any council in Cambridgeshire to further the interests of cycling and walking opportunities through our work in developing all the feasibility studies in order to hand that over to the responsible authorities that are responsible for delivering those. SIL is not about recouping money. It's about supporting infrastructure that provides services and facilities for our community, and a bereavement centre is absolutely that.
We've just given you another 30 seconds.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I was interrupted. And I wanted to say that I don't know the intricacies of Huntingdon's business case, and I'm surprised that Councillor Dupre is so familiar with it, but I am aware that Huntingdon borrowed the money in order to deliver their site. So they are paying huge interest payments. That won't be a burden that we have to suffer. This doesn't add to the carbon emissions.
Can I ask you to sum up, please, Councillor Bailey?
They're going to be cremated. They're going to be cremated somewhere. And actually, if they're cremated more locally, it will lessen the carbon emissions. So I really want people to support this project. It is a good project. And
thank you, Councillor Bailey. We have been requested for a recorded vote. So I will now pass to Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to call your name. If you can tell me whether you're for or against. Hang on. Councillor Akinwale.
Against.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Bovingdon.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Kane.
Against.
Councillor Colbert.
Against.
Councillor Denny.
Against.
Councillor Dupre. Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Goldsack.
For.
Councillor Goodall.
For.
Councillor Holtzman.
Against.
Councillor Horgan.
For.
Councillor Huffer.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Inskip.
Against.
Councillor Lay.
Against.
Councillor Miller.
For.
Councillor Pettit.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Trapp. Councillor Trent.
Against.
Councillor Vellacott.
For.
Councillor Wade.
Against.
Councillor Alison Whelan.
Against.
Councillor Christine Whelan.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Wilson.
Against.
Chair, that's 14 all.
Thank you, members. As you can see, the result of the vote is tied. I am able to exercise my casting vote. After careful consideration, I will be voting in favour of the motion. The motion is carried. We move to agenda item 19A, which is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority appointments.
Say that 14, it's so tiresome. It's ridiculous. You have like it.
Members, I now move to agenda item 19A,